A year ago, a video went absolutely viral where people could not tell the difference between whether it was a game or it was real life body cam footage from an actual scenario, until further footage was released and it became clear that it was actually a game. Some people were left excited, others were left concerned. I guess media outlets were left outraged from the dangerous and harmful causes it might have, but nonetheless, the game 1 year later is actually here. Considering it was made by two indie devs, a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, which is crazy, it begs the question: does the game actually feel good? Does it play well? Does it look visually aesthetic? All of these questions that you probably have, I'm going to answer in this video, because the 45 Australian dollar price tag, you want to know that it's worth it. So I'm not going to waste any time with the intro. Let's get straight into the review. Starting off with my first impressions of how the game felt. Right off the rip, you definitely have that ultra realistic feel. Sound effects, the gunplay, and the movement all feels relatively real. And if you've shot a gun in real life, you know that bringing that gun up, shooting accurately is not all that easy to do, especially with auto. So taking the real life scenario into consideration, I know what they were trying to go for. It kind of makes sense, but the things that I noticed immediately that I didn't like were things like the motion blur. It was quite excessive and it can be somewhat sickening. I understand the approach they're trying to go for, but I think that motion blur can definitely be reduced, especially with the shakiness. The sound effects overall feel really nice, and I was quite surprised that they managed to actually get this right pretty early on in the game. Directional audio is good. You can hear people above, below, left and right, and that's quite a good signal to find people where they are. It's also something that you take into consideration when you're firing, knowing that you're probably going to give away your position. So sometimes you're more likely to hold off your fire knowing that you don't want to give up your position unless it's a sure shot. So I really like that the sound effects are actually accurate and give you good information in the game. Now let's dive into a few specifics. Because it's in the beta, we only have a handful of maps and game modes. Deathmatch being a free-for-all, team deathmatch being a 5v5, and then something similar to a search and destroy. As for the maps, even though there's only a handful, they actually feel quite familiar. They're not obviously the same as any Call of Duty or Rainbow Six Siege map, but when I say familiar, a couple of these maps feel like they got the inspiration from those games. And I kind of like that because those maps are actually good. But there are a couple maps that are completely unique, like the jungle one, which I personally really love. I think there is a fault where you can't really tell where the boundary is. You're kind of walking along the edge and then there's this weird glitch of it shifting you to face the other way. I think they could improve that with some blur or some sort of signal to know that that is the edge of the map. But nonetheless, it is a really cool environment to really play tactical and try and get the one up on your enemy by really playing to the advantage of the shadows. Unlike most other first-person shooters, you can't actually choose your gun in this game, which I kind of like. It keeps it simple, and you also have a gun on rotation where every single other person in the lobby has the exact same weapon, so there's no advantage as per a meta or what you would find in most other first-person shooters like Call of Duty. So I actually like that for a change, but I can't imagine it getting boring on a longer scale of time, which is something that I really wanted to touch on, was does this game have longevity? Now, like I've said before, it's only in its beta and we don't have a clear roadmap as to what to expect in the future. However, in regards to its longevity, I can actually picture there being a very competitive scene. The one problem that I see with that is I don't feel like there's going to be a large competitive scene. I feel like this is going to be more of a niche game, which is going to take a particular interest in an older demographic. I would assume this game isn't really going to cater best to the average casual player. Not that it's a bad thing, because I like competitive games. I just don't think they're really offering anything for a casual player. There are no real rewards or milestones or unlocks, things that people can work towards which they feel rewarded for the hours that they put in. So I feel like that's going to be another downfall of the longevity of this game. People are going to get bored pretty quickly. Yes, as a 5v5 it's pretty fun, but I can't imagine that for weeks and weeks and weeks on end you're going to continue to get that same enjoyment out of the 5v5. I can understand that there's going to be a small portion of people that are going to want to leaderboard climb, and that'll be their sense of reward, but not everybody is in that same mentality, and it only caters to a very small amount of people. So even though it is so early on in the game, I think it's important that they add some sort of reward system, like a prestige system or whatever it might be, which will make people feel better about the time they're investing. Small things like that can go a long way. Another important thing to address are the glitches and the overall playability. How does it actually function? So there are a few issues with joining games sometimes. I've not had that issue all that often, but I've seen other people complain about it. That's one small thing to note, that you might have connection issues. I mean, after all, it's not a triple A game. So also the settings and the menu can kind of get a little bit annoying sometimes, and there's a few things that need to be added and changed. Like when it comes to leaning, I like to lean with the toggle, and I haven't quite found that option in the settings. There's a few other things that they'd like to tweak. Also, backing out of the menu can be a little bit of an issue, but other than that, there's no real bad issues that would need to be addressed. There's also a few little glitches in the game, but that's kind of expected when you're playing a new game, especially in new maps. Just like in Call of Duty, whenever they introduce a map, there's going to be glitches that people are going to find. The last important thing that I wanted to touch on is the dynamic weather and dynamic time. That's something that you don't really see all that often, and because of this Unreal Engine 5, they managed to make it pretty good. It actually works really well, and when you're in the dark, the tactical side of things changes very, very much with using your torch. I kind of really like that aspect of the day and night shift, and I also like how the audio and the sound effects change with the weather. So when it's snowing and it's really windy, you're not likely to hear your opponents as easy, so therefore you could use moving faster to your advantage, and all those kind of little things that will make the playstyle different. I think both the dynamic weather and time has allowed for more variety in the gameplay style and overall feel, so I really like that they did this well. So as an overall summary, there's quite a few positives and negatives, but I truly think that this game is the future of gaming. It's kind of brought virtual reality into a first-person shooter which you're playing from behind a screen. It actually makes you feel more like you're there. And if anybody who's played VR or been in a real close quarters combat scenario, it does really well in reflecting that. So overall, I think the sound effects, the visuals, the gameplay, and the gunplay overall feel really good, which is very important for any first-person shooter. I just think that there's things that they should add and change in order to keep this game going on a long enough time scale to really make this a great game overall. So down to the final question, is it worth your 45 Australian dollars right now in its beta stage? And for me, I think it absolutely is. Even if you're not going to play this an excessive amount, I think this is a perfect addition to your arsenal of games. I really don't want to play Call of Duty all the time, but I also don't want to play an excessive amount of 6 Days in Fallujah because it's PvE. So this PvP, very realistic, unique style of play is just refreshing. And I feel like I really am drawn to this game. It's given me that itch again to play. So that's kind of nice to have that feeling from a game, because I haven't really got that from Call of Duty, and I lost it pretty quickly with 6 Days in Fallujah. So my advice is to buy the game and at least try it. I have been extremely impressed, and I hope that the money invested from its player base will be reinvested into the game and it will be improved. But I guess time will tell. If you guys enjoyed or found the video helpful, please drop the video a like. If you have any comments for me, drop in the comments below and I'll do my best to get back to you. Also, if you're not subbed, make sure you hit that sub button because I would be very appreciative. And I'm going to be releasing a lot more gameplay / game review videos just like this. And if you made it this far in the video, make sure you comment real one down below so I know who the real ones are. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.